Hello everybody, this is Chaos with Chaos Esports Productions, bringing you another Bronze to Masters League Series game. Today we're going to be looking at a PvP here on Yonsu, and today we're going to be talking about three major topics. We're going to be talking about scouting, we're going to be talking about unit composition, and we're going to be talking about when to push. I think it was about 2 videos ago, I got a comment from somebody who said that they wanted more metrics and things to be aware of, and this is my attempt to try and remedy that. So I'm actually going to speed it up a little bit just so we can get through kind of the initial scouting pattern that I take as a Protoss player going up against another Protoss player. So first things first is I usually scout after my gateway. I find it to be just a little bit more efficient as far as the economy goes, but it also gives me the opportunity to kind of have that slightly delayed scout to scout for any proxy gateways. So as you can see, I kind of come to the top of the base here, come down to the bottom to make sure there's nothing fancy going on, and then I just go straight across to my opponent's base. Now, if you are a little bit more worried, you could probably scout more at your natural, and that's something that you could think about doing. So, going to be getting our simulator and cybernetics core just like any normal Protoss would, and we're going to go in and we're going to take a look at what our opponent is doing. Now, the one thing that we do notice is we do notice that he is scouting gas, so his gas is already up, pretty much very similar timing to what we've seen, and we see his cybernetics core going down pretty much exactly how we've seen. So the only thing that we really don't know is when he's going to take the second gas. Now, as a Protoss, in the PvP matchup, the first thing that you have to worry about is proxy gateway. The second is a 4-gate. Usually the tall tale is the second gas and when it goes down. So I started to bring this probe back, and now I'm going to choose to hide it at the natural, just to have a delayed scout to check on any other gateways that are coming up or the second gas that we want to see go down. So behind this, I like to play pretty safe. Go ahead and plant down the second gateway, and after I plant down the second gateway, I go ahead and get my second assimilator and then start to think toward expanding. I usually do go Zealot first, just because Zealots are very, very crucial as far as tanking any damage up front early game, and you never want to get into a position where it's just like a stalk at war. So we get back in, we get a pretty decent scout, we see everything's going on, we're pretty comfortable. We don't see a second gateway just yet with that initial scout, but we did see the second gas, and we did see the mothership core. So we know he's looking to play a little bit more, most likely on the defensive side. So, still going to be pumping out units with at least one of our gateways, since at this point we're not 100% sure of where he's at, whether or not he's been chrono boosting the cybernetics core, or what tech path he's chosen. We want to be a little bit careful for any type of early push. Now, I like doing a very, very, very early expand style. So I just go ahead, plant down my Nexus, and then start thinking about getting up my tech. Now, as you can see, I held off putting guys in gas. I think I just simply forgot, personally. I can't quite remember now that I think about it. There we go. So yeah, so I delayed that a little bit just to increase my mineral count early on to get this Nexus down as quickly as possible. And basically at this point are going to be focusing on continuing my probe production as well as getting units out and making sure that I'm not pylon blocked, which I frequently do. So next thing that we have to worry about is the 730 mark. The 730 mark is going to dictate whether or not our opponent is going for DTs. So what do? We go ahead and build ourselves an observer. The observer is going to be very, very crucial. Now, personally, I build one observer and leave it with my army rather than going and scouting, simply because I find that the hallucinated phoenix is a way better scouting method than the observer, and having that detection at my base early on is going to be very, very crucial in case of some type of early push with a whole bunch of hallucinated units and or slash DTs, as I mentioned before. So going to be chrono boosting out a immortal, continuing pro production, things like that. And then obviously doing the appropriate teching for the late game. Now, 2 base can sustain pretty rapid immortal production off of 3 gates. It's usually okay to do that. Personally, I like starting to head toward my late game composition a little bit earlier than most players, just simply because unit composition when you get to the mid and late game is a very, very, very key component to this matchup. So I'm going to be getting down the Templar archives as quickly as possible. I don't really have a specific timing for that. I have a good sense of, okay, I've got a couple mortals out, my 3rd immortal's out on the way. I should probably start thinking about getting Templars, because in my opinion, best composition is like a whole bunch of zealots, maybe 5 or 6 immortals, and then a whole bunch of archons. So he's going to go ahead and start to push in, and let's see, there we go. Start to apply some pressure. Now, one thing that we notice in the engagement is that he's got a very, very heavy stalker count. Excuse me. Stalker counts, in general, stalkers are not very effective in the PvP matchup just because zealots tank so much damage, and their damage output is a lot higher than a stalker. So I tend to go with a more zealot-heavy army than I do with a stalker-heavy army, just because even though zealots aren't as mobile as stalkers, they do a significant amount of damage, and stalkers are really only useful for, you know, doing a random blink into the main, kind of to disrupt what my opponent's doing. So I'm going to start getting my Archon production, as well as go ahead and blow down these rocks just to put us in a position to take our 3rd. And then, as you can tell, I'm going to go ahead and send out this zealot to go ahead and scout his 3rd base, because I want to see, okay, I'm thinking about taking a 3rd, where's my opponent in regards to taking a 3rd? So I'm going to come in here, go ahead and kill the probe. I don't, you know, maybe not kill the probe, just sit here and attack the Nexus while I put mine down. So at this point, we're feeling pretty good. As you notice, we've delayed getting upgrades significantly, a significant amount, and I tend to focus on getting up my unit composition a lot quicker than I do getting the upgrades. As you can see, we do have charge on the way, and that's kind of a part of the late game composition, but since it's such a crucial component to the composition, I focus on getting it before I even think about planning down my forges. So Archons are coming out. Now, in the PvP matchup, I said I was going to talk a little bit about unit composition. Unit composition right now for the PvP matchup is very Immortal Archon Templar focused. Or, not Templar, but Tempest focused. So that is the optimum super late game composition. For a relatively, you know, I would say that 14 minutes is still kind of mid-game-ish. You're starting to get into the late game, but you're not quite there. So obviously, if you're going to be focusing on getting this type of composition in your mid-game, you're not going to really focus on getting out your Tempest until probably around the 18-19 minute mark. And a lot of times, even this composition is just strong enough to go through any other type of composition that your opponent might throw at you. So, 3rd base is getting up to snuff. We've getting more gateways out to boost up our production and get things ready for a soon-to-be assault. So we see that our opponent is scouting us once again. And this is about the time where, I believe, if I remember right, I go ahead and throw out some more Archons. We're going to go ahead and speed it up since it's pretty passive at this point. Where do I do that? I want to say this is probably about the time I should throw out a Hallucinated Phoenix to get an idea about upgrades. Maybe I come here and then throw it. There it is. Okay, so Hallucinated Phoenix is going to come out. We're going to get an idea of where his upgrades are in comparison to us. As we can see, we've got 1-1 on both sides. We're going to go ahead and back up, slow it down a little bit. Now, you can see I try to focus down the Nexus, but obviously with him coming in here, I really need to focus on killing out majority of his army in order to be able to sustain the assault on his third. So I'm going to not speed it up. I'm going to put it on faster. We're going to come in here. Now, you can see that since I've got enough zealots, they can tank a lot of the stalker shots that you're going to get with the very heavy stalker composition. And then you're just going to be able to stutter step move into the Colossus to take down the Colossus as quickly as possible. Because obviously those are going to be your heavy hitters and deal the most damage since they do area effect damage as opposed to just straight up shots. So we're going to have a couple of these zealots deal with the natural, and then we're just going to come in here. Now, I see that the upgrades are going, so I focus one of them down immediately, and then when he comes in with his Colossus, I can then use that to my advantage. Because obviously he doesn't want me to take down these upgrades, and he's going to try and eliminate as many units as possible by moving his Colossus in. So we're going to come in here, we're going to focus down the Nexus, and then you know, just being ready, you know, being in a good position to just go ahead and take the game. So yeah, so let's kind of do a little bit of a recap. As far as early game scouting, you want to make sure that you, especially in the PvP matchup, you want to double check for any proxy gateways, especially in the lower leagues, just because lower leagues people tend to cheese a little bit more than in the later leagues. Granted, I'm not saying that cheese is inevitable in the higher leagues, because some people are like that. But anyway, so we want to scout around for proxy gateways, and then once we have determined that no proxy gateways, the next thing that we want to check on is he foregating? And if he is, how are we going to defend it? What are the things that we need to do to get ourselves to defend it and progress into the mid-game? And then as far as unit composition, as far as the PvP matchup is concerned, I would say that right now the Zealot Archon Immortal composition is pretty rock solid. And then obviously as you kind of get into this later game period, assuming that this doesn't happen, you want to start focusing on getting out Tempests and taking more bases and so on and so forth. Next, you want to figure out when you should take your engagement. You want to put yourself in a position where you can get the appropriate concave, as well as you want to make sure you're not too terribly far behind in upgrades, because upgrades can be very crucial in an engagement, given like a very similar unit count wise. So I think that's all I had to say about this game. I hope you guys enjoyed. Feel free to go ahead and, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button down in the lower left hand corner. It's greatly appreciated. Also, if you enjoyed, feel free to hit the like button and share with your friends on Facebook and Twitter who are trying to learn Protoss, and I hope this helps all of them out. So feel free, if you've got any questions, go ahead and leave those in the comments section below, and I will see you guys in the next game.